So we're coming into a section of Ecclesiastes now where Solomon is reflecting on his experience of money and wealth and possessions, and particularly his relationship with those things when his relationship with the living God had broken down. And when he wasn't looking any longer to that to give him his meaning and purpose and significance, and he began to develop this idolatrous relationship, particularly with money. Now, it's an autobiographical book, but as Solomon reflects on his history with these things, you'll find on the one hand, there's this experience of regret and repentance that he's trying to capture in the book. But also on the other hand, as he reflects on his folly and sin, the fact that we get to listen in on that gives us the chance to learn from his mistakes. Now this is quite a long section in the book of Ecclesiastes. And what that means is we're going to have a chance over the next few videos to keep coming back to these questions, to think about them and to pray about them again and again and again. And that will give us the opportunity to get past what we think and actually will allow the Spirit the opportunity to expose what is really going on in our hearts and in our lives. You see, that's the process by which we gain wisdom. Okay, prayerfully, in a way that is open and vulnerable to the Spirit, we study the Bible in a sustained way. And we also study our own hearts. You see, we have to get past the defenses that we put up even to ourselves. And we need to overcome the fear of what we might find if we actually carefully look into our own hearts and minds. We need to give this process of exploration, I suppose, you need to give that process time and you need to give it attention. And you need to work it out in the context of a deep security in our relationship with the God who is our Father and who is drawing out the reality of our sin and folly through the work of his Spirit and through our engagement with the Scriptures, so that he can deal with it and so that we can be liberated from what Jesus calls our being enslaved to sin. Now, interestingly, as we hit Ecclesiastes 5, Solomon doesn't deal with the question of our greed as if it's a personal and private affair. All right, for Solomon, it wasn't. And actually, it isn't for us either. You sometimes hear people kind of shrug off their sin by saying something like, well, so long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, why is it a problem? Well, Ecclesiastes 5 utterly torpedoes that sort of nonsense. All right, we are social creatures, and inevitably we are embedded in a complex set of relationships that connects us with other people and with wider structures of society. And that means that our sin always hurts other people. Now we might not see it. Okay, the people that our sin hurts might be people we never meet. Okay, they might be anonymous, faceless workers hidden in a system that we don't even know is there. Or it might be that we know it's there, but we don't appreciate the connection between my greed and their being exploited. But just because we don't see it, or just because we don't acknowledge it, or just because we're not aware of it, or because we don't care that much about it, that doesn't change the fact that our sin always affects other people. In fact, this is such a universal and kind of uncontested reality. You know, the fact that one person's sin always affects other people, always hurts other people. It's such a universal reality that Solomon sounds almost fatalistic about it. Yeah, he's thinking in this section particularly about greed and about financial exploitation. There's so many other situations where the same spiritual law could be applied and worked out. It's so prevalent that Solomon thinks you shouldn't even be surprised by such things. And the fact that we are so often shocked when exploitation and corruption are exposed, tends to show actually just how unthinkingly naive we are about human nature and about the nature of the society and the structures that fallen humanity will create. You see, when you think about what people are really like, then certainly as far as Solomon's concerned, it's patently obvious that there will always be corruption and oppression and injustice and exploitation. Sometimes we want to blame, the system, but the system is a system that's been built by people, and it's only corrupt because the people who built it and the people who in it are corrupt. You see, everyone wants a piece of the action. That's Solomon's point here. Everyone wants to get as much as they can. And when everyone is playing the system, we just fit right in. See, what might look like incredibly impersonal structural sin actually comes down to the very personal sin of an individual's greed, or a lot of individuals' greed. You see, Solomon, on reflection, as an old man looking back, now understands this. He's looking across the years of his life, and it's been a life of fantastic extravagance and unprecedented levels of personal wealth and resources. The king, in our passage, the king who profits from the fields was, of course, Solomon himself. But now he can see that his affluence came at a price, and that price was paid by others. What does he say? The poor were oppressed, their justice and their rights were denied. And it wasn't just Solomon. Like, he presided over a whole culture that was intrinsically corrupt and callous and cruel. Everyone is using and abusing those underneath them for their own advantage and their personal gain. Everyone was playing the system, getting what they could, making what they could. And the problem is that it seems so normal, so commonplace. That's just what everyone does, right? Well, maybe it is, but the fact that everyone does it doesn't make it any less sinful. When you strip away all the veneers of respectability and the rhetoric that makes it sound like, well, that's just business, you might even make it sound like it's virtuous in a way, but Solomon recognizes it and calls it out for what it is: greed. And Solomon's point is there will never be justice. There will never be dignity. There will never be the respecting of rights while there is greed in the human heart.